Tonight, stranded in Afghanistan.
Am I going to make it home? Am I going to end up living here? Am I going to end up dying here?
The Taliban, now in control of the war-torn country, grounding private planes ready to take off with Americans on board.
The Taliban is holding them hostage for demands right now.
This as the devastation comes into focus. The president surveys the aftermath of Ida's wrath in New York and New Jersey. And
who's behind the partisan recall of Governor Gavin Newsom?
What's at stake in next week's special election in California?
The rising crime, the rising homelessness, the rising cost of living.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
A big battle over voting rights now over in Texas, where tighter reforms have become law. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
Good evening. I'm John Jessup. Texas joins 18 other states that have passed voter reforms since the 2020 election. Critics describing this one as the most controversial in the country.
Republicans call the Texas order an election integrity bill. Democrats, meanwhile, say it's Jim Crow 2.0 and even fled the Lone Star State this summer in a futile attempt to block its passage.
Now let's make this final. Election integrity is now law in the state of Texas.
And this afternoon, Governor Greg Abbott there signed the sweeping election overhaul into law, banning drive-through and overnight early voting, adding a new IQ ID requirement for absentee voting, and changing the process for mail-in ballots. And with that, let's bring in our Faith Nation political panel. Joining us tonight, Nathan Gonzalez, editor and publisher of Inside Elections, and CBN's chief political analyst, David Brody. Nathan, David, welcome. It's great to have you with us this evening. So the Texas voting bill, now law. Republicans say it's about security. Democrats say it's about easier access to the ballot box. Nathan, what is your read?
This is a microcosm of the discussion or fight that we're seeing all around the country. I think particularly after the 2020 elections, Republicans continue to believe it should be more difficult to vote. There should be more restrictions, or you should have to do more in order to vote. Democrats believe it should be easier to vote, and that's a fundamental difference between the two parties. When it comes to 2020, there is a gubernatorial race in Texas. In 2022, there is a gubernatorial race in Texas, but it's not one of the hottest states. But the question is, what does this look like in some other more battleground states when it comes to control of the Senate?
David, your take on all this. You know, Texas didn't have a lot of the questions that other states like Pennsylvania and Georgia had. So the reasoning behind Texas's voter reform law?
Well, it's sweeping up really Republican-controlled legislatures across the country, and I think that's a big part of it here. Look, it's interesting to see the media headlines on this. If you look at the Associated Press and CNN, and I can go down the line, NPR, their headlines all say Texas signs a new voting restriction law. Of course, you heard Greg Abbott say he talked about election integrity and that this is a victory for election integrity. It's interesting how the media spins this about voting restrictions. And that's what really this is all about at the end of the day, controlling the narrative. I mean, if you think about it, there's going to be new ID requirements needed in Texas to vote. Why exactly is that a restriction? I know they're going to point to other parts of the bill, but the point is that requiring more ID, or I shouldn't even say more ID, but requiring new ID requirements is not a restriction. A lot of people think it would add to the integrity. It's just interesting to see this spun by the media out there.
David, Texas is also making headlines because of its new abortion law that allows residents in the Lone Star State to sue other citizens over abortion. That comes with a $10,000 award. The Justice Department is now stepping in to find a workaround for women seeking abortions. David, where does all of this lead?
Well, we'll keep an eye on what the DOJ does. I mean, I think it's going to be ultimately, you have a Supreme Court that decided, in essence, to not get involved in that Texas law. And so, then now you're going to kind of, in a way, pit the DOJ and the Supreme Court to a degree against each other. I'm not quite sure where that goes. I will tell you this. I think where it ends is in 2022, potentially with Democrats doing better than they would normally have done based on the fact that this is going to gin up the base on the Democrat side. I don't think there's any question about it. I mean, Nathan can speak better to this, but I would think that, the House Republicans are excited about retaking the House in 2022. But I think this puts a bit of a kink, if not a kink in those plans, something for sure to watch.
Nathan, multiple polls should now show President Biden's approval rating sinking under a cascade of crises. Do the controversies around Republican-led legislation like we're talking about in Texas, actually help him, hand him a lifeline by shifting the focus off of the quagmire in Afghanistan?
Well, at first, I think David's absolutely right that that the Texas bill that the threat that Democrats feel from the Supreme Court, particularly with more justices from President Trump, that this makes it a reality, and that makes it, I think, more likely to excite the Democratic base and potentially hurt the Republican gains that are likely to come just from a historical perspective. But President Biden's job rating is a problem for Democrats. Traditionally, midterm elections are a referendum or a midterm test on the president. And if a majority of Americans don't like the job the president is doing, they can't vote against him because he's not on the ballot. So they're more likely to take it out on Democrats that are in office. And so we're still more than a year from the midterm elections, but I think President Biden has to prove himself in other situations and sort of regain the benefit of the doubt or regain some momentum and trust before we get to the midterms, or it's going to be ugly for Democrats.
Now, the White House sent today an emergency funding request to Congress requesting billions in Ida disaster relief for resettlement for Afghans and a short-term extension to avoid a partial shutdown, not to mention the Democrats' $3.5 trillion infrastructure proposal, something the New York Times has described that legislation as providing, quote, cradle-to-grave government assistance. David, to you, is big government spending like this going to become the norm in America?
Well, I think yes. I mean, I think it's starting to become the norm in America. And you know who? And this is not just on Democrats. I mean, you can thank Republicans as well. It started under George W. Bush and has gotten progressively worse, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended, through the Republican years as well. So you can't just put this on Democrats. But here, Democrats are doing cradle to grave. And I think what's going to be interesting is how Republicans play this. I mean, Republicans can say, look, even the New York Times is admitting the, quote, dirty little secret, which is that's exactly what this is, cradle-to-grave government, and do we really want this? And I think that is something that Republicans can capitalize on.
Nathan, we'll give you the last word. Just a few seconds left.
Yeah, well, I think if you want a dark secret about Capitol Hill and how it works and whether a piece of legislation is going to pass, if you have the votes to pass something, you vote. If you don't have the votes to pass something, you talk about voting. And that's right now where Democrats are. They're talking about when they're going to vote because they don't have the votes. Even that means that all Democrats aren't on the Democratic side on this infrastructure bill. So they still have work to do.
Nathan Gonzalez dropping a little wisdom on all of us. Nathan, David, thank you so much for your time and your enlightening perspectives.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Meanwhile, a developing story out of Afghanistan where 4 Americans safely escaped over a land border.
All of this while the Taliban now claims complete control of Afghanistan after raising its flag over the last province fighting against the militant group. CBN senior Washington correspondent Tara Mergener has the latest. Tara.
Well, John and Jenna, a daring escape a week after the last U.S. troops pulled out of Afghanistan. But now Americans trying to get out as we speak cannot because they are being blocked.
Posted videos show the Taliban fighting over Panjshir Valley, the last rebel stronghold north of Kabul. As the Taliban claims total control of Afghanistan, the 1 to 200 remaining Americans like Nazria, still stranded, are desperate to leave. She says the Taliban is going door to door trying to find them.
Am I going to end up living here? Am I going to end up dying here? What's going to happen?
4 Americans just able to flee by land are said to be in good condition and say the Taliban did not try to stop them. This is the first time a route other than by air has been facilitated by the State Department since U.S. withdrawal. As domestic flights resume in the country, the Taliban is stationed at every airport. Satellite images at Mazar-e-Sharif show commercial planes that could evacuate some 600 passengers blocked over and over by the Taliban. The 6 private planes chartered to rescue Christians by 2 of media host Glenn Beck's charities.
They're not going to allow American citizens to leave until they get full recognition from the United States of America.
But the White House says there is no rush to recognize the Taliban as the official government of Afghanistan. Appearing with Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin in the Middle East, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said he is unaware of any, quote, hostage-type situation.
We're conducting a great deal of diplomacy on this as we speak. We've also been engaging with the Taliban on this topic, including in recent hours. They've said that they will let people with travel documents freely depart. We will hold them to that.
And meanwhile, it is not just the Taliban accused of keeping these flights grounded. Plan B, who is organizing some of these flights, evacuation flights, says it is the U.S. State Department that is holding things up, John and Jenna.
All right, CBN's Tara Mergener. Thank you so much, Tara. Well, here with us now is Michael O'Hanlon, Senior Fellow and Director of Research and Foreign Policy at the Brookings Institution. Michael, as always, thank you for being with us. We just saw Congressman Michael McCaul, the ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, in Tara's piece. He is claiming that the Taliban are holding American citizens hostage until they get full recognition from the United States. Secretary of State Blinken pushed back on that, saying today the Taliban are not blocking those with valid documents. Michael, what's going on here?
Well, we'll find out, right? I mean, this is going to play out over days and weeks. And the good news is that it's sort of useful for both these American perspectives to be out there and for the Taliban to hear that we're watching and we're not really all believing them. And we're hopeful that they can at least achieve a minimal standard of decent behavior, but nobody's taking that to the bank. And we're going to see what happens. My best guess, which is always a dangerous thing to do in regard to the Taliban, but my best guess is that they really don't want to take American hostages because they know that would poison the relationship probably permanently. What I think they do want to do is slow down the departure of most Afghans who might be looking to leave, because they want a lot of those Afghans to help them build the country. And they want to persuade those Afghans that it's not going to be as horrible to live under Taliban rule this time as it was last time. So I think they are trying to stop the exodus of all skilled Afghans, people who are working in the healthcare fields. This Taliban does seem to want to have some interest in success by traditional definitions. They don't want to go live in mountains and in caves in the 7th century like they did last time. So if I'm right, then we have a certain amount of leverage, not to get a government that we really will like, not to get a style of living that we really will like, but we have some leverage, at least to get Americans out now, and hopefully to make sure that the Taliban over time will allow some modest flow of Afghans who may want to leave to depart as well. But right now, the Taliban just don't want to see that exodus because they want that talent to be mostly home to help them build the new country that they seek to lead. That's my guess. Right. But again, Blinken's right. We got to watch.
Yeah, prevent the brain drain, as they call it. So insurgency movements throughout the country were both inevitable and now serve as a test of the Taliban's control, Michael. There's no greater symbol of that than the famous Panjshir Valley, which the Soviets never managed to hold and remained unconquered, even under Taliban rule in the 1990s leading up to 9/11. The Taliban now claim control, even as the spokesperson for the Resistance Front claims otherwise. Michael, how significant is this province?
Well, it's significant. It's amazing. It's a beautiful province. I've only seen it from a distance, but it really is this narrow valley with high mountains on all sides, really militarily quite defensible by a decent, even small force, which is why it never fell in the 1990s to the Taliban. And it's in some ways, impressive. The Taliban could take it this time if they did. Obviously, I would have preferred they not. To me, I was hoping that Panjshir could be sort of like Kurdistan in Iraq, where even though it stays part of the country, it remains autonomous. And the government in the capital allows a certain amount of autonomy. And we keep watch to try to keep our friends in this area with some degree of protection. That's what I was hoping for. It looks like that may not happen. So it'll be one more place where we have to use our leverage in the form of money, access to financial bank accounts, access to diplomatic recognition to make sure the Taliban treat people there like they said they would, granting amnesty now that they've won, if indeed that's the case. But I have no independent way of confirming what might have happened because, as you know, communications are pretty much shut off with Panjshir, and we don't have, drones flying around much or anything else to get independent footage. So I think we're going to have to let, things play out just to confirm the simple fact of who's in charge.
Michael, we're a little tight on time here, but if I can, I want to squeeze in one last question. The leader of the terrorist Haqqani network and one of the FBI's most wanted is now going to be the interior minister in Afghanistan. Can you describe the relationship between the Haqqani network and the Taliban?
Yeah, the Haqqani network is part of the leadership of the Taliban, and yet they are also affiliates of al-Qaeda. So this is one of these things we've known about all along. It's why the UN was saying all through the winter and spring that the Taliban was still in cahoots with al-Qaeda indirectly. I don't think they're planning together operationally. I don't think the Taliban is helping al-Qaeda get ready to attack the West again, but they tolerate a lot of sort of cross-membership, if you will. And so if you're taking a pure definition of whether the Taliban has broken from al-Qaeda, the answer is no, they have not broken. But if you're watching to see, are they really collaborating on any planning to carry out terrorist attacks against the West? As far as I know, not right now, at least, but we got to watch.
Yeah. All right, we will be watching. Michael Hanlon with the Brookings Institution. Michael, good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you kindly.
And we'll be right back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug-of-war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. Well, hundreds of thousands of people are still without power tonight after Hurricane Ida. The death toll rising too, now surpassing 60 people across 8 states. After visiting Louisiana last week, today President Biden toured some of the damage in New York and New Jersey.
That's right. The storm caused billions of dollars in damage as it churned from the Gulf Coast all the way to the Northeast. CBN's Abigail Robertson joins us now with more on President Biden's trip. Abigail, the president seems to be using this as an opportunity to promote his infrastructure and climate change plans.
That's right, John. Today, in a briefing with local officials, President Biden says as he's traveled the country assessing the damage from storms like Hurricane Ida and the fires blazing through the West Coast, he says now more than ever, it is imperative that we make addressing infrastructure and climate change a top priority in order to prepare ourselves against future natural disasters.
For decades, scientists have warned of extreme weather would be more extreme, and climate change was here, and we're living through it now. We don't have any more time. I mean, every part of the country is getting hit by extreme weather. And we're now living in real time what the country's going to look like. And if we don't do something, we can't turn it back very much, but we can prevent it from getting worse. And so we're all in this together, and we've got to make sure that we don't leave any community behind, and it's all across the country.
As Biden surveyed the damage, one thing in particular he talked to the government leaders about is how to build back their communities in a way that takes into account future severe weather events. So if another 10 inches of rain hits, the damage won't be quite as catastrophic.
I want to talk a little bit about the specifics about the things you think you would need, not just to get back to normal, but to get back to a place where if it happened again, the damage would be considerably less. That's what this is all about, in my view. This is an opportunity. I think the country's finally acknowledged the fact that global warming is real and it's moving at an incredible pace. And we've got to do something about it.
And the House plans to take up the Senate-passed bipartisan infrastructure bill later this month, but it's still unclear if President Biden's $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation plan has the votes. This is the human infrastructure and climate change bill he wants to see on his desk. Still unclear if Democrats have the votes within their own party to get that to President Biden. John, Jenna.
Abby, we know you'll keep us on top of that. Abigail Robertson reporting today on the president's trip. Thank you so much, Abby, and we'll be right back after the break.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. California Governor Gavin Newsom leads in the polls in next week's election recall.
Still, residents statewide are energized to unseat him. Dale Hurd brings us a look at the election.
California voters have been mailed ballots asking them, shall Gavin Newsom be recalled, removed from the office of governor? They're then shown a list of candidates to succeed Newsom as governor and told to vote for one. And the front-runner to replace the governor? Conservative radio talk show host Larry Elder, who leads a crowded field of 46 challengers and has the support of many California evangelicals. Newsom supporters are portraying the recall as a far-right takeover attempt.
Who's behind the partisan recall of Governor Gavin Newsom? Anti-vaccine QAnon extremists, violent white supremacists like the Proud Boys who attacked our nation's capital on January 6th.
And Newsom warns Elder is...
He's to the right of Donald Trump. To the right of Donald Trump. That's what's at stake in this election. And don't think for a second you can't do damage in that role.
Elder is pro-life, against more gun restrictions, says the minimum wage should be zero, and has vowed to repeal the statewide COVID mandates.
At the state level, I'm not going to require any kind of public worker to wear a mask or any kind of public worker to have a vaccine. I think that's an assault on freedom.
Elder accuses Newsom of wrecking a once great state.
It's about the rising crime, the rising homelessness, the rising cost of living, the outrageous way this man ignored science, shut down this state, while having his own kids enjoy in-person private education.
Most polls show Newsom leading, but experts warn that Californians who want Newsom removed might be more motivated to vote than those who want Newsom to stay. Californians will also be able to vote in person, and Democrats now face the possibility of losing another high-profile governorship after the resignation of New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. But there could be even more at stake. There are reports that 88-year-old California Senator Dianne Feinstein is struggling with cognitive decline and could be facing early retirement. It is the governor of California who would choose Feinstein's replacement. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Finally tonight, they say it's difficult to make it big in the music industry, but one rodent is well on his way.
A pet rat named Mr. Blick has gone viral since his owners released a video of him playing a harmonica. A Dutch man in Holland was gifted the tiny instrument, deciding it was well suited for his pet rat. With the help of some sweet honey drizzled on the harmonica, Mr. Blick composed the mouseical masterpiece.
Don't forget the sweet honey.
I think I've seen it all.
Have a great night.
See you tomorrow.